What is the square root of minus 15? This is also the number Professor Barry Mazur tried to help people imagine in his book Imagining Numbers. Since the domain of function y equals to square root of x includes only non-negative number, expressions like the square root of minus 15 are traditionally considered meaningless or improper in elementary mathematics. However, historically, the square root of minus 1 is introduced to represent the square root of minus 1, meaning the square of the square root of minus 1 equals to minus 1. Therefore, the square root of minus 15 also represents the number whose square is minus 15. The key point of confusion is that minus 1 has two square roots. To resolve this ambiguity, we define the principal square root of minus 1 as I, and write square root minus 1 equals to I. The other square root of minus 1 is minus I. With this in mind, we define square root of minus 15 equals to the square root of 15 times the square root of minus 1. This is the same as the square root of 15 times I. It is important to emphasize, for any positive number x, the identity square root of minus x equals to square root of x times I is a definition rather than a direct consequence of exponent rules. In fact, certain exponent rules do not extend to negative numbers with fractional exponents. For example, the general exponent rule x times y to the power of r equals to x to the power of r times y to the power of r fails for negative numbers x and y when r is a fraction. Otherwise, we would encounter a contradiction, showing in the following. We know 1 equals to the square root of 1, and the 1, of course, equals to negative 1 times negative 1. And therefore, if the above rule would hold for negative numbers, this can be written as the square root of minus 1 times the square root of minus 1, that is, I times I, gives us negative 1. We thus have 1 equals to negative 1. Contradiction. Finally, we point out, expressions like the square root of I shall not be used to represent both square root of I, since every algebraic expression must yield a single value. This is consistent with the definition of a function, which must pass the vertical line test.